Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comic Vault. I am Captain Logan, and joining me tonight is Austin the Day Ghost.
Yo.
And we've got my son, Jayson.
Yo.
And we've got Dan Torrey. Welcome back to the program, Dan.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
Tonight's topic, so I'm calling this a vault. It's not going to be a review, so maybe I shouldn't put it in that category, but it's a comic discussion. We're going to do a podcast tonight talking about Dawn of DC and recommending titles that we think are worth reading from DC's new kind of relaunch. And this is sort of Dan's idea. I have not been looking at new comics hardly at all over the last 5 or 6 years, honestly. And every now and again, Austin and I will delve into something, particularly because of recommendations on the request. So we've dabbled in stuff here and there with DC, particularly out of continuity stuff. But I haven't been, Black Label things, and
yeah,
I haven't.
That awesome Imposter book.
That was really great. We read that Green Lantern book, which we didn't care for too much, but there's some other things. And I guess she's in continuity and keeps showing up and stuff. But anyway, I digress. I was surprised to see her in some of the stuff we looked at for this. So Dan hits me up and he's like, hey, have you looked into the new DC stuff? Some of it's kind of good. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised to hear that. I hadn't heard anything. I haven't cared in a long time with the big two at all, really, except for, again, just occasional out of continuity stuff. And I was like, well, maybe I'll check some things out a little bit, and maybe we'll do a show and do kind of a roundtable thing like we did all those years ago with New 52, and I can even at this point say all those years ago with Rebirth. And so this is kind of that sort of thing again, although much more entrenched in whatever's been going on with DC lately than those things. I actually, when I first heard about this, Dan, I thought it was, and not because of anything you said, but I had a few people like on our Discord and stuff coming up and be like, hey, did you hear that DC is like full on rebooting? I'm like, they're probably not though. Like I don't really believe that. It's kind of the same thing we were hearing when Future State happened. That thing that was originally called 5G and then it turned into Future State, and I was like, well, that's not going to last very long, right? And then it didn't because nobody read it, and I don't think. And then people were like, no,
fired the entire regime that was the brainchild, like that was their baby. They got rid of Dan DiDio.
Is that right?
Yeah, they fired him because he had that idea, and then all the writers at DC had an intervention, and they were like, Dan DiDio, you cannot do this. And then the brass at DC fired him.
I knew DiDio left, but I didn't realize it was over Future State.
He wanted to, the plan originally with the 5G thing was to make it so, do a soft reboot so that all the DC characters had aged in real time, so Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent would be old men in the current continuity and all new heroes would take their place.
Yeah.
That was the original plan, yeah.
And often happens, when that doesn't work, we go, let's do the exact opposite. So now it's all bring back all the legacy heroes and don't work that hard at replacing people and bringing in a lot of new diverse cast. And there is still some young heroes that are holdovers, and there's like everybody has a family right now. It's like we've got Bruce Wayne, he's Batman, but he's got his whole Bat family, and Superman has a bigger family than he's ever had, and Green Arrow has a bigger family than he's ever had, and we're resurrecting people that have been dead for 20 years and.
Yeah, I would call this, I mean, in my opinion, I would call this a soft reboot into the post-crisis DC continuity, where most of the characters are kind of what you remember from that kind of 80s through mid-2000s period. And they've obviously taken some things from the current stuff, like John Kent as Superman, like you mentioned, some of the other characters that have been invented since then. But to me, especially with the Green Arrow book, I just felt like I was reading pre-New 52 Green Arrow again. It was great.
Yeah, well, and tonally, you're absolutely right. What's weird is, and again, I've not been reading, so correct me in the comments, folks that have actually been in this, because I don't know where this happened, if I'm right about it. But Rebirth people assumed was going to be a full-on reboot, and then it was continuing New 52 continuity, but just overhauling like the tone and the attitude, and also bringing in Dan Jurgens' Death of Superman. That was the one part of the old continuity that we brought into the New 52 continuity, because we killed that Superman and then we replaced him with like actual Superman. Basically is what happened, and that's where we invented John Kent, who is hilariously from the old continuity brought into New 52 continuity. And then what I've heard is that somewhere a few years ago, or like a couple of years ago, we officially went back to pre-New 52 continuity again, and now you can reference things like Death of Superman and Nightfall and Parallax, and like a lot of the things that we're talking about, because I don't want to do major spoilers if we can help it, but there's some things from particularly mid to late 90s continuity that we're bringing back during New 52 and Rebirth you couldn't, and I assumed that like we would have rebooted into something even totally brand new with Dark Crisis. But the only point of Dark Crisis was to bring back the old multiverse for, like, no reason. And you could have done nearly everything we're doing without that event. By the way, I made the mistake of reading that. I went ahead and sat down and read all 7 issues of that, none of the tie-ins, and it's not great. What's weird, so I'm going to get ahead of myself when I say this. What's weird is Joshua Williamson wrote that, and I've never been a big fan of his. Like nothing he's done that I've read I've ever has really grabbed me, and that was kind of par for the course for me. And then he has like this huge ramp up in quality right after that with the books he's writing for this. So I don't know what's happening. I'd like to blame editorial, or maybe he got possessed by a better writer. I don't know what's happening.
I had the same exact experience because I tried to get into Rebirth. My 2 favorite DC characters are Aquaman and the Flash, and during Rebirth I tried to jump into the Flash when he was writing it, and I didn't find it compelling really at all. So I picked up the first issue of the new Superman thinking it would just be like, whatever, and it was fantastic. Everything about the new Superman book is amazing. I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, I'm very bewildered by that. It doesn't make any sense, because I'm with you. That book is really wonderful, and I didn't believe you. Like, I saw his name on it, and I was like, I mean, Dan, you can like whatever you want, buddy, but it's Joshua Williamson, you know? Like, that's like handing me a Tomasi book and being like, just wait, this is gonna be the best Batman thing you've ever. Like, it's Tomasi. Like, it's probably gonna be just fine, you know? Tinian, it's probably gonna be just fine. Those guys have written some okay things here and there, but anyway, John Ty in the comments there, and thanks for watching live, guys. Feel free to leave comments as we go, and we'll try to answer some of them as we move along. He says the Death Metal event was the ending of New 52 Rebirth. I have tried to finish that event like 5 times. I've read half of Death Metal several times, and I just never get to the end of it. So, yeah, I guess that's where that technically happens.
Yeah, I didn't read any of that stuff. I dropped off after I didn't have any interest in the Aquaman and the Flash stuff going on at the time, and like seeing all of the death metal, all this stuff, I was like, I have no interest in any of that. So I'm glad we're not doing any of that stuff anymore.
I guess it was a fitting end to the New 52.
Yeah.
Totally, it was kind of fun, but I wanted it to be out of continuity, and it was too long, and anyway, so I didn't, oh, you know what? No, you said death metal. I read half of metal. I never even touched death metal.
Oh, I didn't realize they were 2 separate things.
Yeah, no, that's that's the sequel. Because, of course, that was huge, and the Batman Who Laughs was massively popular, so naturally, a couple years later, they had Snyder do a sequel to it.
That makes sense, yeah. I just personally don't have any interest where, like, Batman is not my favorite DC character, so I've never wanted all of the DC characters to be Batman. Like, I don't understand why that's appealing to people, but apparently
Dude,
it is.
I'm a massive, gigantic Batman fan. I don't understand that either.
I mean, like, to be fair to them, Snyder's a good writer, so I'm sure, like, he did something more interesting that I'm thinking of, but, yeah. Premise alone, it doesn't really interest me personally.
Yeah, it didn't me either. They made for kind of some fun pop figures, you know. I bought those.
Yeah, true. Greg Capullo, I'm sure, kills it on that book. He's always great.
Oh yeah, it's lovely, and I like the Batman Who Laughs miniseries. That was pretty good.
Well, the best thing Metal gave us is the main villain of the last season of The Flash. So.
Right.
Oh yes. You want to get nuts?
You wouldn't have that. So, Dan, why don't you, before we start actually getting into some of these, just set us up real briefly with, like, status quo, would you?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, but I think the status quo here really is just kind of like all of the characters presented in their kind of like quintessential classic form, using their various like families of characters as like kind of the way that Batman does with the Bat family, like they're kind of involved in all of the adventures in some way or another. The reading like the Superman book and the Action Comics book, I think is really fun because like the Superman book is the other Superman family characters are there, but Clark and Lois are really the focus of it, which I really enjoyed. And the Action Comics is really like the Superman family book where Clark and Lois are there, and then it's like all of the characters are involved to some degree or another in the plot. But that's the way I would describe it in writ large. The status quo, in terms of like the wider DC universe, the Justice League has kind of been disbanded at this point, and the Teen Titans are the primary like quintessential superhero team in the DC universe right now. Bloodhaven is kind of their headquarters, and Nightwing is kind of taking the front seat as a leader in the DC universe, which is a big fan of that character. I have really enjoyed. And all the various books have their different kind of status quos for the characters. Green Arrow and his family are kind of trapped in like a time distortion sort of thing, where they can't like get together. Like the book is all about trying to put them together, and for various plot reasons they can't, due to like the machinations of future Oliver Queen, because he's trying to prevent some larger event from happening. Green Lantern has kind of a fresh start. Which this is the most I've ever liked Hal Jordan in really anything I've read. I adored the first 2 issues of Green Lantern. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Shazam is kind of what you would expect. It's partly based on Jeff Johns' New 52 stuff, partly based on the status quo of the movie, which to varying degrees I do like. There's some stuff that compromises to be kind of like the movie that I don't like, but overall I do really like that book. So yeah.
Basically, like every time we reboot or like soft reboot, everybody's starting over, and then Batman's just like launched forward, and he's like dealing with the multiverse and Zur-En-Arrh and stuff.
Yeah, I tried to read an issue of Zdarsky's Batman, and it was all about like Batman of Zur-En-Arrh like having a secret bat cave underneath the bat cave, and I was like, I have
That's
no
as far
interest
as I read. I read 5 pages and I was like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe someday I'll catch up to this. I ain't starting here.
Yeah.
The worst part with that is it's like a sandwich where the bread is really moldy, and then like you have really fresh ingredients. Because it was like the middle part of that issue is just like Batman taking out or like intimidating Penguin's kids, who are like now the new like crime lords or whatever. And then that stuff was really cool. But before and after that, it's like, oh yeah, Zur-En-Arrh was building a robot in my basement.
There's a robot.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah, and like Mr. Terrific's there, and he's like, Batman, you're filled with multiversal energy. it's like
So yeah, a couple of things launching off of what Dan just mentioned. First of all, I think it's really interesting, Dan, that this kind of relaunch, and I gotta call it a relaunch before reboot, grabbed you like it did, because you lost interest when you didn't like what they were doing with Flash and Aquaman, neither of whom have books right now.
Yeah, apparently Aquaman, there's a status quo thing set up for him in one of the recent, I assume it was the Dark Crisis, whatever thing that they did before they did this initiative, and he's going to have a book. And then the Flash has had a big anniversary issue, sort of like Wonder Woman, where they're setting up the status quo moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I'm just not usually a DC person in general, but I've been really excited about like some of the announcements that they've been, doing around the movies with hiring James Gunn, and some of the announcements they've been making. So I was like, I'm excited about DC right now. Let's see what they're doing, and they didn't disappoint, which I kind of expected them to be honest. It was a pleasant surprise.
I think it's really interesting that our kind of 2 MVPs right now kind of the characters or the areas of the DCU that the comics are most focused on, that are kind of headlining everything, are Superman and Titans. They've really kind of taken over. You've got like 4, if you count minis, you got like 4 Superman books going on at the same time, or books that are like tangentially related to Superman, and then you have a lot of Titan stuff.
A lot of Titan stuff, probably like 4 as well.
Well, and a lot of that is because of the aftermath from Dark Crisis, because the main villain in that is sort of Slade. And Nightwing at the end of Dark Crisis... So, like, Nightwing tries to pull together a kind of makeshift Justice League to replace the Justice League that has ostensibly died. Spoiler alert, they did not die. Not only are they brought back at the end, but they were never dead in the first place. Which is why it's kind of weird when... I will spoil things from that, because that's been a while and it's set up for all of this. It is kind of weird when we get to the end of that we introduce Waller's new big, very arbitrarily thrown at us plan of, now we're going to try to kill all the metahumans. That's why Peacemaker is showing up in everything. He's her right-hand man right now, and is trying to destroy all the metahumans because the Justice League being resurrected, coming back from the dead, is a bridge too far. They weren't dead!
So basically what you're saying is...
So I understand that!
Waller's plan is to kill the heroes.
Yeah, that's her whole plan. It's really arbitrary. It's like we decided we wanted that to be the new status quo moving forward, so we tried to retroactively make the events of Dark Crisis lead up to that. They don't in any way. It's just the tacked on ending of Dark Crisis. That's why Waller is everywhere, and that's partly why Titans are is one of the big focal points.
Did you read Titans?
I started it. I didn't. I read I read a couple issues of Nightwing.
Okay, I did.
And
not
then I was looking at Titans right before we started recording, and I didn't get a chance to finish even the first issue. So you guys will have to tell me a little bit about that. But Nightwing just read like Titans, because the first couple issues of that coming out of it, because that book was going already. So like some of these things are new number 1s, and some of them we were already in the middle of stuff. We didn't start all the numbers over, which, by the way, I somewhat respect. It's kind of nice that not everything has to go back to the beginning. It does make it less easy to jump on for new readers potentially, but I do like that not everything has to have a new number 1. I do think we're a little bit arbitrary about what starts over and what doesn't, number-wise, but, whatever.
Yeah, it seems to me like most of the stuff that did start, that I'm aware of anyway. I don't know if Tom Taylor was writing Teen Titans or if there was even a Titans book before. But like Nightwing is continuing, I would assume, because that's been an Eisner winning series for multiple years in a row, and Tom Taylor's run has been critically acclaimed. So they're going to let him write that book for as long as he wants to. No, that makes sense.
Am I wrong? Was Titans not? Oh, Titans was new. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they have a new number 1. Yeah, they do.
Titans was in that.
Okay. I'm just making up stuff right now.
I didn't read anything that was in the middle because I didn't want to get confused.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, real quick, Jayson, tell us what your experience was like getting into all this stuff, because not only have you not been reading, but you've never regularly kept up with DC, and part of the reason I wanted you on this show was to see how good of a, like actual, again, it's not really a reboot, but this is another one of those things like 52, like Rebirth, that's designed to bring in people that don't read comics.
Yeah.
So... was it easy to jump in? Did you know what you were looking at?
I think, and I liked how, they had, 16 books out, and it was really easy to just kind of pick and choose what you wanted and not be super confused, because, I didn't read any Nightwing, and Titans was pretty easy to read. I don't know how much I needed from Nightwing to read Titans, but
you didn't feel like you needed it.
I didn't feel like I needed to, and same with Superman. I didn't read any Action Comics or any of the other Superman stuff, so I liked that I could just, pick and choose what comics I could read. And
That's awesome.
And they had a good selection of stuff.
Good variety.
Because I like Titans.
I think it really helped that a lot of their characters were sort of in a place where they could have new kind of stuff to start over. Like, I don't think Hal Jordan even had a book for like 3 or 4 years before this. Like, I think it was the other Green Lanterns, like, I'm not a big Green Lantern person, so I don't remember their names, but I think there's one of them named Boz, and he has like a mask, and then there's the woman with the glasses.
That's that new one, yeah.
Yeah, so I think them and Jon Stewart were the stars of the Green Lantern book for a while. So it's kind of the first couple issues are kind of a big coming out party for Hal Jordan returning to Earth and all that kind of stuff, which was good. I thought it was a good introduction to his character for people that maybe hadn't read a Green Lantern comic before.
Yeah, it's a very stripped down issue. That's the big thing I liked about it. And one of the things I thought was funny, because a lot of these have little like B stories and stuff at the end. And the one with that has Guy Gardner, and I'm like, oh man, they made Guy Gardner like a 60-year-old man. I wonder why.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call. There's places where it's very funny retroactively how close to movies we're trying to make things look and feel, because some of these things are anticipating movies coming later, and some of them are dealing with things that are out, and some of them are dealing with things that are just about to come out, and then when that thing comes out and isn't popular, it's really funny. Like, Black Adam is very prominent in Dark Crisis, and he looks a lot like The Rock, and it's really funny, because you're reading that going, oh, they really think people are going to care about this, okay.
And I had that with Wonder Woman, too, where they have her movie costume, which, like, doesn't translate very well to art, I thought.
Yeah, I haven't seen her anywhere yet, except for the brief moment that she's there at the end of Dark Crisis. But I didn't read. Dan, talk about those big oversized issues, the one shots they did for characters that don't have books yet.
Yeah, so the two that I read, those are the two that I'm aware of. I don't know if their other characters got them, but the Flash and Wonder Woman both got 800 issues, which was kind of like. At least in my understanding, was a cap off for the previous writers to end their run. Like, I know Becky Cloonan was writing Wonder Woman before they gave the gig to Tom King for this new volume. So she got to kind of do a really cool story about like what Wonder Woman means to the rest of the characters in the DC universe and her relationships with Batman and Superman in particular. I thought that story was really sweet. And then we get an introduction to Tom King's run via a story in the future where we see Wonder Woman's daughter, which is one of the main, the big introductions that he's going to be making in his run in the future, where Damian Wayne is Batman and John Kent is Superman, and she's insufferable. I don't like her at all, but I think the point of her character is that she's supposed to be that, and then the arc will be she'll like get over that because she's kind of like a teenager when we first meet her, and John Kent and Damian are both like, she's a spoiled brat. We don't like her either. So we kind of get the introduction to her in that issue, and as well, it looks like there's going to be something. Tom King's going to be adding to the mythology of the lassos in Wonder Woman, because of course Wonder Woman has one, Donna Troy has one, and then there's a third one, and it's mentioned that these lassos. Have some sort of significance when they're all together, and Wonder Woman's daughter is the first person to wield all three of them at the same time, and it's like a big deal. And she finds this old man in prison, and it's kind of ambiguous as to who he is, and he's going to like tell her about like what this power means. So I thought that was intriguing enough to at least give his first arc a try for me. And then the Flash was a
I hope they do
deal.
a big event where everyone gets a lasso. Like,
oh, no.
like that
I may
Marvel
stop
event
reading if they do
when,
that.
when everybody gets a hammer.
And then everyone gets spider powers like in Spider Island.
Yeah,
too.
with Lasso Island.
Yeah, I assumed that was new, but I didn't know if that had been a thing for a while, because there's a lot of things I haven't read for a few years, so there's a lot of stuff that kind of jumped out at me, like, I didn't know this was going. I didn't even know that Superman was public, and he's not now, because...
Yeah, it's a Bendis thing.
Lex, they're stuck with a lot of dumb Bendis things with Superman, unfortunately. Like, John Kent being aged up, I think... I'm in the majority that doesn't like that, and everybody's stuck with it, and it sucks. But what was I going to say? But yeah, Lasso of Persuasion. Yeah, that was new to me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought all the mythology stuff could be potentially interesting. And then The Flash was, like I said, kind of a similar deal. The writer coming on that book is Cy Spurrier, I believe. That's how you Mike Deodato is the artist. Mike Deodato has been an artist at Marvel for many, many years. He drew a lot of Bendis' Avengers run. He's a great artist. The only thing I don't like about him is that he draws Norman Osborn as Tommy Lee Jones for some reason. I don't understand that casting at all. I don't see Tommy Lee Jones as Norman Osborn, but that's the one criticism I would make of his art. Otherwise, he's fantastic.
Now I wish he played it just to see.
Yeah, I know. Like, just that accent saying like Willem Dafoe lines would be very strange, right?
Yeah, I know.
And his Green Goblin would be his Two-Face, where it's just him being goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you see him as Two?
Avenge
me!
Yeah, so their kind of take on the Flash, I thought was really cool because the Flash, as people that have had any exposure to the character, either in other media or the comics. He's more of a light-hearted sci-fi kind of character. He's like the Spider-Man of the DC universe. I would describe it. All of his villains, they're all in cahoots with each other. They're all like down on their luck, loser, working class stiffs. That's what I've always liked about the Flash. And this is a radically different take on it. It's still like the kind of wacky sci-fi, but it's more of a horror tilt this time, where the Flash is like running through these like Lovecraftian horror alternate dimensions, and it looks like he may get trapped in some of them, and that may have implications for the Speed Force. Mike Deodato is a perfect fit for that because he's more of kind of like a dark. He has a darker quality to his art than you would expect for the Flash. So. And it's Wally West in the costume, which he's been in the costume again for a while. We can throw Barry in the trash can, which is fantastic. I was really happy with the Flash issue just because it was so different and also enjoyable. Like it wasn't different in like a off-putting way. I thought it was really intriguing.
Well, from my perspective, the Flash is dead because I just read Titans #1, and that's like the opening.
Well, wait till you see the second issue. It's more complicated.
It's more complicated. Read the second issue.
Austin, you read that Wonder Woman issue too, right?
Yes, I did. And I had the same thing as Dan, where I thought the first half was really good, and then the second half, I agree that the daughter was insufferable. And I'll probably give that run a try when it comes out, but it was definitely a weaker half than the first half. And then I didn't read the Flash one.
Before we get into some of the monthlies and stuff, let me just say it's interesting because it does feel like we're kind of pivoting again. It's no secret that the comic industry has not been in the best shape, and that the book numbers have been stripped down some. And DC, for a long time, it seemed like 80 to 90% of what they were publishing was just Batman things, which is not an exaggeration. That's all they were doing, and so it seems like. You had like Future State, and then after that there was kind of maybe an understanding of, okay, well, like if Batman really isn't selling that many books, maybe we should try other things we have. So it's really interesting to see this flip where you don't have as much Batman, and there's still some, but like it's not any more than Superman, and it doesn't feel as important or relevant. You have one book in Brave and the Bold that I'm having a hard time even telling if it's supposed to be in continuity. It's an
ambiguously in continuity anthology book. Like the third issue is not even a Tom King story. It's like a completely different team doing a new Batman story in an ambiguous place in continuity. So that's kind of like the pitch for the book.
I haven't looked at that yet, but yeah, that's Tom King writing a real early like Batman Year One story before he's even met the Joker, and then you have in another book a Owen Detective, which started way before Dawn of DC, but it is still continuing, so I threw it in here. I read the first couple issues of that run, so it's a few months before Dawn of DC, but you can't start that in the middle of it because it's
I've actually read
long ongoing thing.
His run. I think I'm maybe like 4 or 5 months behind on Detective. That book is great. I really enjoy what I've read of it.
But I was just gonna say it's interesting simultaneously to have a book that's far in Batman's past and then one that's far in Batman's future, like all at the same time.
Yeah.
None of these things seem real relevant to what's going on right now. So I assume the only one that really does is Zdarsky's Batman, and I can't make heads or tails of that without going back several issues.
Yeah,
I want to.
yeah, same. I mean, like, to be fair to Chip Zdarsky, like, I thought the character writing in that issue I read was really strong. Like, I really liked his voices for all the Bat Family, and I liked the thing at the end of that issue I read where, like, all of the Bat Family that comes over and makes brunch for Bruce to, like, make him happy, and so that he's not, like, you know, a grumpy, mean person. And like, I liked all that stuff a lot, but the premise, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just want Batman doing detective stuff.
Yep.
I agree with that. It's got that like JMS Spider-Man thing where like I really like the character work, but then like I don't always care about the stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm having that with a few of these books in general, where overall, it seems like we've amassed some pretty good writing talent, where most of the dialogue writing and the organization of scenes and stuff is really strong, but some of them just have, to me, real been there, done that, initial premises, or just things that I'm, you know, not excited to see again. Like, have either of you guys looked at the John Kent miniseries?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
There
so
were few books that I don't care enough about this.
So I read the first
Yeah.
couple issues of that. I think it's only 2 issues in, and Jayson did too. So we'll talk about that some when he gets in here. But that is a couple of things that Dan will absolutely have no interest in whatsoever, and that Austin will roll his eyes at because of things Austin and I have talked about. So that is Tom Taylor. And that is in a situation of Tom Taylor doing things that he's really known for. So it's Road to Injustice. Yeah, and we have to bring in we have to and we have to bring injustice into continuity. So I am going to spoil this, but if you read that first issue, you already know injustice stuff is coming. And for a second, I was like, "Oh, are they just calling the story that?" But no, it's in the logo of the video game. And oh wait, it's Tom Taylor writing it. Oh no, I see where this is going.
You know what it's going to lead to, Cap?
What's that?
A big event called Injustice is Deceased.
Oh. You can't put it past them, though. That is entirely possible, and that's what it would be called. But no, it's... So I guess we've made John Kent's arch nemesis Ultraman. Because Ultraman is the person who kidnapped him and took him to an alternate dimension for several years, which is why he's aged up. So that is Bendis's fault. Bendis did that to him, and Ultraman is now going through. You know, we just got the old multiverse back, and already we have a villain going through it, trying to kill all of the versions of one character. Speaking of JMS's Spider-Man, so you have JMS's Spider-Man is not exactly like that, but I just mean, you know, like with all the killing all the spiders, it's another one of those somebody's got to go kill all of something stories. And so you have Ultraman going to all these different dimensions, killing all the Kal-Els. And at the end of the second issue, Injustice Superman shows up to murder Ultraman so that John Kent doesn't have to, with the neck snap from Man of Steel. Yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, we're doing some stuff like that.
Wait, what's
So
what's
Tom
this
Taylor,
in?
I guess, because you know when you're a writer and you're doing
Oh,
like 16
did you not read
books.
it?
I only read the first issue.
Yeah, that's the end of the second issue. Injustice Superman shows up at the end and kills Ultraman.
No.
So when you're a writer and you're doing like 16 books for the company, there's always like that one that is kind of like, I guess Tom Taylor's got Nightwing and Titans, so it's like John Kent, Injustice.
Well, I know he was writing the John Kent Superman book for a while when Superman was on War World in Action Comics during Philip Kennedy Johnson's run.
Somebody in the comments said that's great and we should read it.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, as someone that's a very casual fan of Superman in the comic books, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just
That
want to
was
read
my
about
reaction.
Superman. Yeah.
Well, and as a more ardent fan of Superman in the comics, I really like John Kent when Dan Jurgens
great.
originally brought him in, but I don't care anymore because he's aged up and.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a cool enough character in like Philip Kennedy Johnson's run. Like he's had some really sweet moments, particularly with the two twins from Warworld that Lois and Clark have adopted. Like there's a really great scene where he feels sort of replaced in the family by them, and he's like kind of jealous of the twins, not in like a malicious way, but like John Kent like asks his parents to go do something like alone, and they're like, yeah, great, we'll bring the twins with us. And he's like bummed out about it, and then the twins are like, do you hate us? And they have a really sweet moment where he hugs them, and he's like, no, you're part of the family. Like he seems like a cool character, but I just don't really have, I mean, my comics budget is like, I'm already reading a lot of books from DC, so it's like it's a partly a matter of economics and partly a matter of interest, you know. Like I'm already reading 2 Superman titles. Superman is a great character, I like him, but like he's not Spider-Man to me. Like I don't need to read like, you know, 8 Superman related titles, you know. But that's just my personal taste. I'm sure other people, you know, feel differently about it.
Oh, and the other thing they're doing in that book is, as you see on the cover here, Adventures of Superman, John Kent. I think this is a 6-issue miniseries. They're giving him the '90s blue Electro Superman powers.
Oh no!
See, like, to distinguish him from Clark, like if they do it in a cool way, like that doesn't bother me too much.
Okay, but what's silly about it is, well, first of all, just that on top of Injustice Superman, it's like, we're just rolling a D20 for random crap to throw in a book, is the first thing.
Yeah.
But second of all, so we're still so nostalgia baity and look, this stuff is better than I expected it to be, and it's better than comics have been for a while whenever I've jumped in for like in continuity things. But I'm still seeing red flags for things that we cannot get away from them, and one of them is nostalgia bait for stuff, particularly from the 80s and 90s, even if it didn't sell, just because people remember it. So it's like, we got to go back to Superman Red, Superman Blue. You know, nobody bought that, right? Yeah. You know why people remember it? Because it was dumb, and because Wizard wouldn't stop writing articles about it. Like, that's why we remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, like, I didn't really have any interest in that coming back, but the fact that they're doing it with a character that I also don't care about, I'm like, yeah, fine.
You know? The writing in that book is fine. It was kind of enjoyable, but it's schlock and.
Yeah. Tom Taylor's he's busy with Titans.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Taylor is a great writer. Like the first person issue of Nightwing, I don't know if either of you guys read that, but man, that issue was really cool. I've never seen a comic book do like a first person narrative before.
I haven't gotten there yet.
And it's
fascinating.
So cool. It's comic book storytelling at its most creative. Like, I love seeing people play with the medium, and it reminds me sort of like that issue of Snyder's Batman where you turn the book around as you're reading it when he's trapped in the Court of the Owl's maze. It's not the same phenomenon, obviously, but similar kind of like experimenting with the medium successfully and like adding a lot to the story. I don't know. Like, I was really impressed by that.
So when you say first person, you mean like really camera angles? Like first person POV?
You're in Dick's POV the entire issue.
That's neat.
That is cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I'll have to look at that.
That's weird.
Well, it sounds like some of the stuff you just read longer and you got to the better stuff. Now, I am caught up on Superman, and let me just put all my cards on the table right now. I enjoyed quite a bit of this. Superman was the book that I absolutely must continue reading.
Yeah, it's great.
There are others that, like, if you put it in front of me, I'd probably keep reading.
Oh,
but Superman is the one I absolutely have to.
I'll keep reading Titans.
Yeah, Titans is great too.
Titans is great.
Titans is great.
Titans is great.
It's great. It's great.
Jayson, you're caught up on Superman too, right?
I am, yeah.
So he and I both read the first 5 issues. Yep. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
And I would continue reading Green Lantern just to see if it gets any better, because I was not the biggest fan of the first 2 issues, but I feel like it could get better. Like, I feel like they're leading up to things that could make it better, but...
What didn't you like about it?
It was just kind of blah. Like, there was nothing happening. Like, and I haven't read that much, but the Green Lantern stuff I have read, it's just the same thing every time. and I come back to it, and like I read because I love Green Lantern, and so I wanted to read the comic. I read it, and it was just kind of the same thing I had read 3 years ago, that from like the 80s, and I was just like, okay, he's back on Earth, he's drama stuff, cool, like.
The first 2 issues are very character focused, so if you're looking for something like more actiony, I can see that criticism for sure.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to see what they do with the more like Guy Gardner stuff and stuff.
See that stuff, like the backup features with like the alternate universe Green Lanterns. I was like, I'm not even gonna read these. I don't care. I like the Hal Jordan stuff more, but I can see why. If you're looking for like a Green Lantern book that's like a grand sci-fi epic, like the main story is not that at all. It's much more like superhero on Earth, like dealing with, him and Carol's on and off again relationship. And if that's not what you're looking for in a Green Lantern book, I can. And
the second issue won me over a little bit more on that stuff.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Just with the Hal and Carol stuff, it felt very been there, done that to me. Like I just like Jayson. I felt like I've read that 5 or 6 times. Like
maybe so. I mean, I'm not a big Green Lantern person in general. So like to me, it felt fresh because I've the only Green Lantern stuff I've read is the stuff where it's like the big sci-fi actiony stuff, and I'm without cool characters to like interesting characters, at least in my view, to ground it. Like I kind of check out with that stuff, and I've never really latched on to Hal Jordan as a character, so this was kind of like the first thing for me where I was like, oh, I kind of get it now. Like I understand why this character is interesting to people. But if you've read a bunch of it, then maybe it's the same slop you've been served before.
I had the same thing with Dan. The guy liked Rebirth when we did that, but this was even more my speed. I thought.
Oh, interesting. This really didn't do a lot for me. And I'm not a giant Green Lantern guy myself, but I kind of felt like I've been there and done that with him, and I also am a little bit, and maybe we just can't get away from this. I'm kind of over characters with their traditional like jobs that are kind of outdated now, having to make a big deal out of. We don't do that anymore. So like if we got to go from drones to airplanes, why don't you just contrive some other thing he does? Like, eventually, you're not even going to be able to say he used to be an airplane pilot. And it's kind of weird to have that in one issue, but then in another book, you've got Nightwing still doing circus stuff. And, like, that's fine.
See, I had the opposite. I thought that stuff was really cool. And
same.
There was part of me that went, like, oh, man, in, like, 10 years, we're going to have to reboot Green Lantern where like he'll have to have been a drone fighter, I guess, because we're moving.
Or an astronaut, like in the Earth 1 book.
Yeah, well, then I thought it would be an interesting idea if he was like he came from a line of pilots, and then he's somebody who can't actually get in the air, and then he becomes a Green Lantern. And I thought that would be an interesting idea for further down the line. But no, I like that stuff quite a bit.
What did you think about the villain in that book?
So I only read 1 issue of each thing. So I only saw, I can't even remember what his name is, but like there's the bad guy in that first issue.
Yeah, the bad guy. So she shows up at the end of the first issue, and then she's more prominent in the second issue.
Oh, okay.
And she's kind of creepy.
Yeah, she was just kind of there in that first issue, so I didn't really have any feelings either way. I perked up a little bit when they were like, oh, you're in a Manhunter armor, and I was like, ooh, yay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a big part of Ostrander Suicide Squad. So I was like, oh, yeah, the Manhunters are showing up in things. That's cool.
And one of the things that I was really encouraged by this Green Lantern book, and I guess in general on the whole line of Dawn of DC, is I feel like we're finally getting some new great writing talent at a comic book company. Like Jeremy Adams, I think is a pretty solid writer. This is the Green Lantern book is the only thing I've read of him so far. I've heard his brief flash run, the seconds long war, is really great. I still have to read that. And then Philip Kennedy Johnson on Action Comics, he's doing Hulk now over at Marvel, and I've adored the first 2 issues of that. So I'm liking to see. I'm loving, like, we're not just going back to the well and bringing back some of the old guys like Mark Waid. We're also like bringing up some new talent that actually is competently able to write these stories. Because I felt like for a while there, it was kind of like a drought of new talent coming into the industry. You know, I feel like this is kind of like the new wave of people.
And by for a while, you mean like 8 years, because for the longest time, it hasn't just been. I don't know. When I started reading new comics back in the early 2010s, it was a lot of like old guard from the last decade, and then you'd have like a few big new up and comers, but primarily it was guys that have been there for a long time. And then what happened just a few years ago is like 7 or 8 years ago, is all the old guard, most of the old guard left to do creator own stuff, and then what you were left with were workman writers that we then tried to tout up as your big new A-list talent, and most of them just weren't quite up to snuff. And I'm not saying that some of these guys aren't like decent writers, but we pretend like certain writers were at the same caliber as a Fraction or something, and I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not with you, I'm not buying it. And I'm really glad to see new names also, because you cannot keep pretending like Tinian and Tomasi are like your Wades and your I want to say Bendis at one time.
Yeah, and then you think of all the other guys at Marvel that were doing really exciting stuff, like Brubaker, Fraction, you mentioned, so, that kind of group of writers, and then you had like the people at DC in the 2000s that were like, oh, Hickman too, yes, yeah, he's great. You get Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, like that crop of writers.
Oh, sorry, Dan's frozen up on us.
Totally agree with you on that.
It took me a second. I'm like, is he struggling to think of another writer?
He's trying to think of it. I can tell when his fingers were blurred.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at him really small, so
hopefully he's able to come back. He may have to eject himself and come back in. I'm sorry, Dan. I'd hate for you to be frozen like that forever, Dan. That looks like an uncomfortable facial expression to be stuck in. Oh, there he is.
If he doesn't come back and yell, "I was frozen today," I'm gonna be pissed.
I was frozen today.
I was frozen today.
Sorry.
Well,
welcome back, Dan. I'm sorry. Do you remember what you were in the middle of saying when you went up like this?
What was the last thing that I mentioned?
Jeff Johns.
You were in a list of writers.
Yeah, so then you go over to DC in the 2000s, you had guys like Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison and Greg Rucka, same kind of great writers at the company that even outside of comics, like Greg Rucka, for example, he writes novels and stuff, and Scott Snyder. And then after the New 52 reboot, I feel like DC was in such a place where their continuity was so mismanaged, and the line creatively was mismanaged in such a way that nobody really wanted to work for them. So I think that's kind of why they had such a dearth of talent for a while. But I think we're in a place now where people are getting to write the characters that they want to work at DC to write in the first place now. Like you can write Hal Jordan just like being himself, or Superman, or any of these characters now. It feels like.
Yeah, and we're not as much, at least right now at the start of this, trying to tout up characters that nobody cares about and pretending like people care about them, which Marvel, I don't know if they are continuing to do right now because I haven't been reading their stuff, but that's been a big problem with them. And, people are making fun of the fact that they still keep having, Punchline show up. Nobody cares about Punchline, and don't let DC tell you anything different, but... No one cares about her! Stop it!
I've heard people. Me and Austin had a conversation about this. Austin had heard people say that they're annoyed that Peacemaker's showing up and everything. It hasn't annoyed me yet, at least, because I really like Peacemaker. It's been really fun, especially in the Green Arrow book, because I think he fits there more than any of the other places I've seen him show up, because he is like the evil Captain America type of character, and then Ollie is of course like the modern day Robin Hood liberal type character. So when Peacemaker shows up, he's like, "I'm gonna kill all you effing hippies," and I was like, "This is awesome." It's so good. But yeah,
it's odd. I haven't mentioned this yet. It's odd that Green Arrow is is limited. They've told us when that's going to end.
It
looks like a monthly
issues.
like everything else, but it's actually a 12-issue maxi.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Huh. I assumed that was an ongoing as well.
And there's
That's
no
a
reason
lot,
not
maybe.
to. They probably should have said one out of 12 on the first issue, unless they're thinking, I mean, if it's popular, we'll let it keep going. And they could be thinking that. But then why tell us how many issues it's going to be in the first place?
I assume that has to some degree be Joshua Williamson is writing so many books at DC, and then they announced he's one of the architects of the is it the Transformers or the G.I. Joe stuff at Skybound that they're going to be launching?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's
cool. Yeah.
doing, I think, 2 G.I. Joe books. They're launching with like a Duke and Cobra Commander book, and he's writing both of those. I forgot that was him.
He's everywhere right now.
Interesting.
So hopefully the G.I. Joe stuff is as good as some of this DC stuff, because I really like the Green Arrow book so far.
Me too.
That's been one of my favorite ones. I've been looking forward to reading it every time it comes out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
it's-
only issue with Green Arrow #1 is that I finished it and went, "Oh, it's over." So that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it doesn't get as much done as first issue as, say, Superman, which feels like a whole pilot for a TV show, man. Like, there's so much going on in that first issue. It's astounding.
Yeah, that was the one book that I wanted to keep going on. I just didn't have enough time to.
Oh, Green Arrow.
Yeah, I
makes
only
sense,
read the
yeah.
first issue of that.
No, Superman and Green Arrow are the books that I most enjoyed, and that, like I said, I would definitely want to keep going with, particularly Superman. But they're both written by the same guy, and a guy who I just read his event from before this and didn't like it.
See, at this point, like, I'm kind of convinced that, like, these event books that they keep doing, like, even, like, the writers are as apathetic as the audience at
Yeah.
this point. Like, I don't know anybody that reads these events. Like, I don't know why they keep doing them. It just seems to me like they're doing this event cycle because it was profitable in, like, that 2000s era that I was mentioning, you know, where Marvel and DC were doing those kind of event books, and then they would kill a character off, like, every couple of years to get sales, and they're still doing that and nobody cares. It's very strange.
Well,
I don't
see,
get
you say nobody cares, but I would have to actually look at the sales numbers and see how true that is, because you're right. Like, I'm not hearing anybody talking about that stuff, and yet when I got out of comics 5 or 6 years ago, it was still true that your big events, you'd have these secondary events that people didn't read as much, but the big ones, the major ones, Death Metal doesn't count because that was huge, but you know, you get your bigger events that they do every year, usually in the summer, they always did over 100,000, and
Really?
Yeah, always. And so I have to assume that they still always have one going because they're still doing at least half that number. Otherwise, I don't know why they would be doing that. And, like, has that changed that much in 5 or 6 years? So I got to look at it, because I don't trust you that people aren't reading those, or people aren't at least buying them. And it might be a collecting thing. Maybe they're buying them and not reading them, but they have to be getting some kind of numbers.
Anecdotally, like, I guess, you know, which, you know, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I don't hear anybody talking about any of these death of events or the kind of events, like, you know, people that are fans of this stuff, like Night Terrors. I read 1 or 2 issues of the tie-ins, and I'm just like, yeah, I have no interest in this. They're killing off Moon Knight, which we're supposed to be excited about. You know, it's like,
Well, they just killed off Miss Marvel, and it didn't last 2 months.
yeah, that's very true. Because they just used it as an excuse to bring her back as a mutant, and they killed her off in Amazing Spider-Man for some
Which
reason.
everyone knew was going to happen the second she died.
Yeah.
But Dan, that's the thing, is you'd have to look at the numbers of Dark Crisis versus the thing happening right now, because you can always kind of suss out when they're the smaller events and when they're the big important ones, because they'll advertise it like it's really important, but you can kind of just tell by what else is happening around it that it doesn't matter as much. And even though it's all they're publishing right now, yeah, that probably doesn't have the big numbers, but I want to guarantee you that Dark Crisis did at least 100,000 every issue.
And that may be true, especially since the premise was that the one where they killed the Justice League?
Yeah, well, that
Or
was
said
right
they were
after
going
that.
to?
So they did Death of Justice League, and then Dark Crisis was the big event after that where they do Slade forces a crisis to happen because he's
Slade's playing the role of editorial.
yeah, exactly. Well, and Dan, it reads like they're trying to do like a editorial like meta commentary. And it doesn't work at all, but that's what it reads like they're trying to do, where I'm like, yeah, you guys know how dumb this is, and you're writing it into it. That's what it reads like. But they took Pariah from the original Crisis, and they teamed him up with Slade, and Pariah's gone insane, and he feels bad about getting rid of the original multiverse, so he wants to replace the new multiverse with the old multiverse. And that's what he ends up doing. And somehow or rather, that brings us to Dawn of DC. So you read the last issue, that issue 7, and it's Dawn of DC, like huge on the cover. And you could have gotten there without it. I don't even understand how it gets us to Dawn of DC.
I'm just imagining Deathstroke, you know, like a contract killer, waking up one day and being like, you know what, I'm going to start a crisis.
But Deathstroke's whole thing, and again, it's Pariah before him, but they team up. Deathstroke's whole thing through it, and this is where the meta commentary comes in, Dan, is we've got to get rid of legacy. I hate legacy, and so so you have the Justice League that's ostensibly dead, and then you have all of the supposed younger characters, even though all of them have been in books for like 50, 60 years, most of them, and then you have like the Justice Society that suddenly shows up, and they're like, can you use some help from some old timers? You got like Alan Scott, who looks like he's 50 years old, you know, he's not that old, and it's very silly the way the whole thing is handled, because they act like the Earth can't possibly survive without the Justice League, but they have like 800,000 other superheroes that aren't in the Justice League. Just arbitrarily, these 9 people are really super important and are being used to power a like evil doomsday machine. It's like Pariah needs the Justice League to power a machine. Batman's a dude.
Yeah.
But he has to power a machine. I don't understand any of that. And then they get to the end of it, and like I wonder if you guys would maybe not appreciate some of the decent stuff we read if you'd read this first, like I made this mistake of doing, because because you get to the end of that, and the Justice League comes back. And they're like, yeah, we're disbanding, we're not going to be the Justice League anymore. Because reasons? Their whole thing is, we need to try something different. It's time that we handle ourselves in a different way. And I'm like, so, like, not showing up to stop the world from being destroyed? Like, what is the...
Leave that one to the kids.
It's very clear what the Justice League is. Why do you need to not be the Justice League? So the whole thing is insanely contrived.
See, I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like, we want to do this big relaunch, and I think, you know, thematically, I guess it does make sense to have the villain be the guy that's like against legacy, because like the whole thing with Dawn of DC, I think, is as a line is embracing the legacy of the company, which it was one of the things I really like about it. But
right,
I think they're trying to have
not
their cake and eat
embracing it for the last 10 years didn't work for them, so they might as well embrace it now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, because it's like, you know, they have this Tom Taylor, you know, Dick Grayson Nightwing thing with Titans going on, where like they're taking their place in the DC universe. Dick Grayson is becoming like a leader in his own right, and I like that plot a lot. I think that's a really cool thing to do with his character and the Titans, you know. So like they want to have like all the legacy characters back, like Superman and Batman and, you know, all those characters, Wonder Woman, so they can have books for them, but they want to keep the like Titans being the premier team as the status quo moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's awkward, but I mean, I guess not having read it, it doesn't bother me too much. But maybe if I read it, I'd be like, oh, this is stupider than I anticipated.
Yeah, the status quo
goes back to
I'm fine with. I just wish I hadn't read how we got there, because it's
dumb.
That's fair. Batman has this whole speech to Nightwing at the end of that, where he's talking about how he needs to step up and be the leader of, you know, basically all the DC universe, and I'm like, I mean, it's kind of random. I don't know.
By the way,
like,
why does Beast Boy have an eye patch?
He gets that in Dark Crisis. He gets tortured by Slade Wilson. If memory serves.
remember.
I think that's why they're.
Did he have that in Titans?
No,
I
he
just-
has it in Nightwing, and then he doesn't in Titans. So there's probably like another issue of Nightwing or something where he gets his eye back.
He gets rid of it. Anyway, I'm sorry, Austin. What were you trying to say?
Oh, I was gonna say it reminds me a bit of Post Crisis in that like I think it's like the third or fourth issue into the new Superman book, Post Crisis. He meets the Teen Titans, and like he hasn't even met Wonder Woman yet at that point. So it's like the Teen Titans is like kind of the big team right now.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm admittedly not a huge Teen Titans person in general. Like, I haven't read the Wolfman Perez run. I have it on my Comixology app. I have to go through it at some point. But yeah, I mean, I like that kind of change of pace. Because I don't know, I'm not usually a big team book person, but the Titans do have two of my favorite DC characters on the roster, which is Dick Grayson and Wally West at this moment in time. So, like, to me, I'm like, yeah, that this is a cool book to read.
And Cyborg is back with the Titans, so don't let him leave to join the
Yes,
Justice League
please.
when they come back.
I don't mean to keep just braiding this book because I know we're doing Dawn of DC and it's just after this, but since you brought up Cyborg, I have to tell you about this because it's hilarious. There's the scene in one of the first couple issues of Dark Crisis, which, by the way, is initially called Dark Crisis, and then once they bring back the multiverse, now it's called Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, they changed the title midway through it. But there's this scene where Hank Henshaw, Cyborg Superman, just shows up out of nowhere. I didn't even know that he was still around and wearing his old Superman suit, but he's not like he was in the early 2010s, where he's got like that red suit. He's Cyborg Superman again. And he shows up and he's fighting John Kent, and then John Kent beats him. I think it's John Kent. And then right after that, Cyborg just shows up when the fight's already over, and he goes, "You give us cyborgs a bad name."
Oh. Speaking of Cyborg, though,
Ooh, yeah.
Jason, did you
That
say
happens.
you read the Cyborg book? Because I didn't look at that one. I don't know if
I
any of you guys did, but...
It's not very good.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
It's pretty boring.
Okay, but he liked Green Lantern and you didn't, so
Right, but also
Oh,
I
yeah.
prefer the space stuff in Green Lantern, and he's back on
Yeah.
Earth, and okay.
yeah, sure.
Like, I like
sure.
the exploration of Green Lantern. That's why I like Green Lantern so much. But yeah, I also am not the biggest fan of the art in Cyborg. It's just very markery,
Oh,
I guess.
sorry, I don't have that one pulled up because I didn't know that it started yet. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those books where I was like, I don't know if I care enough about Cyborg to read a Cyborg book.
I'm trying to
I
think
like
of,
Cyborg well enough in a team setting.
and
but
I like
solo.
Cyborg too. I can't even remember what happened. Oh yeah, he's like, it's all about him like losing his dad and stuff, and it's just like, you know, like, okay.
Get over it.
he's like, "Quit whining about your father."
I don't know. I think if I kept reading it, it might get better, but
Jason and I also both read
That's fair.
Steelworks. Tell us a little bit about Steelworks, Jason.
yeah, Steelworks is written by Michael Dorn, and it's
Oh.
about
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
because he voiced Steel in the DCAU, so now he gets to write Steel.
yeah.
Oh.
And it's about Steel not wanting superheroes to use their powers for good. I don't know what's happening. in this.
I was very confused by his whole motivation. He has this press conference at the beginning of the first issue that goes on for like 3 pages, and he is
Oh my god.
and he's saying that superheroes shouldn't have to like regular people should be able to solve their own problems, and we shouldn't need superheroes, but superheroes should still be around just in case we need them. And I'm no longer going to go out and be Steel and fight crime, even though later he talks to his wife Lana Lang. They've been married for a few years now. That's a Rebirth thing. He talks to Lana Lang, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna put my suit away." I'm like, "But you just said you were. What is happening?" And then and then he's like, he's not saying that regular people need to put on steel outfits and capes and get hammers and fight crime. He's saying he wants to use his technology to, like, reinforce buildings and stuff.
What?
I don't know what he's talking about, and then the villains are, like, Superman 3 level boring.
Uh-huh.
That's
Oh no.
Did you read issue 2?
No, because why?
Yeah, nothing else happens in it. I think he, because I also read issue 2. And he
Why?
Because I like the first one so much.
That was a book I was 50-50 on. I was like, Steelworks, should I read this? I've already got.
You know what? Apologies to Michael Dorn, but it wasn't great.
It was not great. But yeah, I think the big thing that happens in that second issue is the other Supermans find out that he's got that whole motivation thingy, and they get mad at him. But yeah.
So is the lesson here that Star Trek: The Next Generation actors should never be involved with any writing whatsoever?
At all.
At
Yes,
all, yeah.
yes, that is true. The only Star Trek actor that should get to write things is Walter Koenig. Walter Koenig is a decent writer. Everybody else, no.
We's TOS, so that's okay. It's just TNG.
Yeah, but there's also
No.
some TOS actors that are pretty crappy writers. So. Hey, I have a question. Did anybody else read Action 1050?
I am current on Action Comics. Yeah, I've read the whole current run after
I
War
read
World.
1051.
Hey, Dan, can you explain something to me?
What's up?
Can you try to explain something to me? I have a question for you about Action. So,
Sure.
and I like that issue a lot. I want to keep reading. I just hadn't continued on Action, but so that sets up like the John Kent stuff for his miniseries, and it sets up things for the Superman series, et cetera, et cetera.
Doesn't it set
that
up
whole
some
And
Shazam
Steelworks.
stuff too?
what does it set up from
It sets
Shazam?
up-
I read somewhere that it did, but
I don't
wasn't sure if
remember.
it did or not.
Maybe there
No,
was something.
I've read the first 2 issues of Shazam, and nothing that comes to mind right away, Jason. But I haven't read those issues in a while, so I could be wrong. But it does set up Steelworks. I remember. I remember being advertised Steelworks. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's why I read it. Much to my chagrin. But anyway, so Action 1050 has Lex Luthor murder a supervillain, and I liked this whole thing. We had a villain that was like not really reforming, but trying to sacrifice himself for the greater good, and then Lex kills him and uses his power to make everybody forget that Superman is Clark Kent, or that any Superman has their secret identity. So it works on both Clark Kent and John Kent. And my question to you, Dan, is why does Batman still know?
I don't know.
Like, is the idea that anybody that knew before still knows?
I think
I had
the
that
answer
question,
is.
too.
Because he's Batman.
I think the answer is that it's kind of like the Spider-Man identity retcon thing where Doctor Strange was like, oh, magic, all of the people that need to know for the stories moving forward to make sense will know and no one else will. I think it's just a lazy continuity fix thing, unfortunately.
But at least that had a throwaway explanation. As much as I didn't buy it, this was just Batman knows. And
Yeah.
there's no mention as to why.
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't have an answer for you, unfortunately.
Thought maybe I missed
I
something.
had that
thought I'd
question
ask.
too because they mention it in, I think, Brave and the Bold 1, and I'm like, wait, so everyone doesn't know. I guess he.
Where would it come
told-
up in Brave and the Bold? That's
I guess.
Because Brave and the Bold isn't in current continuity. It's like set in like the what would be the Silver Age of
was
DC's
either-
continuity. Yeah.
It
Must have been
was
something
either, it was probably Superman then.
Hey Dan, would you talk about? We're just jumping everywhere, but would you talk about Brave and the Bold a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh wait. Sorry, I mixed up the titles. I was talking about World's Finest. Brave and the Bold is also set ambiguously in the past DC continuity, but it's not. It's distinctly not Silver Age. It's very dark.
Yes.
So Brave and the Bold is for the first 2 issues. There's an A story by Tom King and Mitch Gerrits, the team who did the phenomenal Mr. Miracle series. I'm a big New Gods fan, so I loved the Mr. Miracle series they did. And they're doing Batman here. It's kind of like a retelling of the first meeting between Batman and the Joker. I think you mentioned, Austin. It's kind of a retelling of the Joker's first appearance.
Yeah, because they're doing that whole thing where it's like Joker is like, at this moment, this person will die.
Yes.
And they can't figure out like how they're actually dying.
Yes. So it's kind of a retelling of that story, and it has this really cool framing device where the Joker is treated as like a silent film character, like all of his dialogue.
Like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's kind
of
like
silent film golden age of cinema Pennywise.
Yes, yeah, it was really cool. And I loved the way that Mitch Gerrits would draw the like silent film like dialogue panels. Whenever the Joker would get like more aggressive or scary or whatever it was, the film reel would get scratchy, like the a projector was like tearing it off of the frame, like, and it was being projected poorly on the screen. I don't know, like I loved all that storytelling stuff. It's a pretty like straightforward like Batman Joker story, but I think the art elevates it to be something kind of special. Like I really liked that story. And then the 3rd issue is totally different. It is the main plot is this character named Mr. Baseball, and he's a new Batman villain.
What?
This is by Tom King. It's written by a different person. And
I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it was Tom King.
No, but it sounds more like a Tom Taylor concoction.
So the story is like.
Kraft and Logan popped into the chat. It was him.
Hey everybody, we're back. I think, yes, and our power went out over here. So sorry for not being around for the last 10 minutes, but hopefully, folks watching this after the fact will be able to see the end of the show. Guys, what have we? Actually, before we get into what we haven't talked about, let me read down if I can find them. The super chats, because we haven't touched on any of those yet. Josh put in a $2 super chat and says yippee, because he's from Star Wars Episode 1 apparently. Yippee! What I've read of hey Josh, try spinning. That's a neat trick. He says what I've read of Dawn of DC is pretty tight, so he's happy with that. And I'm sure Josh is digging that Superman book.
Oh yeah, he's really liking it too.
A lot of nice Silver Age stuff there, but you can still take it seriously. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it goes to really goofy places, but it's anchored in believable enough character stuff.
Yeah, I love the character stuff between Clark and Lois in that book. It's fantastic.
And Clark and Lex,
that too.
I love the discussion about whether Superman should ever write anyone off, or if people are deserving of a second chance. I feel like with Lex it would be like a 515th chance, but
yeah,
it was very All-Star Superman, that one issue where Clark and Lex are in the prison. I thought it reminded me a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Because that's kind of like the ongoing status quo at this point. Like Lex is in prison, doing while Superman's using the resources of his company to further the goals of Superman.
Yeah, and it's the sort of book where there's a plot twist or two every issue, and it never feels too gimmicky. Or maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid too much because I'm liking the plot twists. But like,
no, I agree with you. I think they've been great.
The whole like Superman, like changing LexCorp into SuperCorp. I should hate that, and I don't yet. I know Austin.
I think that's cool.
I know Austin. You said you had a reservation about it.
Well, yeah, because I've only read, like I said, I only did one issue of each thing, so I only read the first issue of Superman. So I was like, I like how it's handled here, but like I am worried about that moving forward. But we'll see.
I was initially afraid that it might turn into like
thing.
Peter Parker has to have his own company. It's not like that yet. It's kind of just Superman stuck with it, and he's kind of just tolerating it.
Yeah. Do you like the art, Dad? in the Superman book?
So I wasn't initially sure about the character models, and then as I read it, won me over more and more with art. And by issue 5, I was really into
liked the Parasite stuff.
I adore the art in that book. Like that splash page in the first issue where Superman's like saving those people and there's like all that stuff reflected in his cape. I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever.
The best thing about the first issue to me is that Superman, I think he stops Livewire at the beginning.
Yeah.
Livewire's attacking her former boss's wedding. And then Superman's talking to the new commissioner, and he just hears the bride be like, we can't get married now. The priest or whatever, they ran away. And then Superman's like, this looks like a job for her. And then it cuts to, like, an image of him doing their wedding, and I was like, this is so perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the scene that immediately got me, where I was like, okay, we're establishing tone, we can go that silly, but we're like really hanging on to what Superman's principles are supposed to be. And I love a book where Superman just goes around saving people. But he's also, conflicted in understandable ways. And I really appreciate that. I love bringing in, again, the old kind of Silver Age backstory, which was already happening in action, and Williamson has a hand in that as well. So I want to think that was his idea, maybe. But like Lex and Superman,
I don't think he's involved with action. That's been Philip Kennedy Johnson the whole time.
His name is on 1050.
And maybe he wrote one of the backup stories or something.
It looked like he was involved in plotting, maybe, because there's a mention in 1050, I think, of Lex in Superman's Lex and Superman growing up together in Smallville, and then that comes up here too, and that makes me think that Williamson came up with that, maybe.
It could be like a Byrne and Wolfman thing, post-crisis, where like you kind of have to read them together because they're just bouncing ideas back and forth. So, like, their runs kind of have to be mixed together.
True.
But
so
yeah,
it could
I love
be
that.
Like that.
I was really won over with the Silver Banshee stuff later. I don't want to give any of that away, but I've always liked Banshee a lot, and they make her awesome in this, and really super sympathetic, and kind of sad and tragic. That stuff's good, and then the idea of like Lex having his own enemies and they're going after Superman, so Lex and Superman have to team up, and his main villain looks like Weird Al. Yeah. That's kind of fun.
I'm really intrigued by the whole like what their machinations behind the scenes are and like what they know about Lex Luthor's past and stuff. Like I'm really intrigued to see what the answer to that whole mystery is.
And just how many of Superman's rogues are they gonna commandeer and do terrible things to, and then how much of that is gonna change their powers moving forward? Because I get the sense that at least for this run, Parasite is like forever changed.
I would assume so. Yeah.
But yeah, I was very invested in all of that.
Me too. I think. I mean, I don't want to give away the cliffhanger of the 5th issue. But the cliffhanger of the 5th issue is, like, I don't know where we're going to go from here.
Interesting.
I'm sure it's going to be similar to the kind of thing that happened in Titans, Jayson. Like where it looks like something happens at the end of the first issue and maybe, like, it didn't, but we'll see.
Well,
we'll see.
I mean,
I can't remember. Does it look like somebody's going to die? Is that I know what it is. Yes.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't just look like it.
It doesn't just look like it.
Shanked. It's,
that was. And what's weird is this reads real kid friendly till you get to that, and I'm like, that's a little gruesome.
It's
It's pretty gruesome.
I mean, the Flash thing is pretty much at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see. I mean, I can't say enough good things about Superman. It's fantastic.
It's one of those. This is such a corny thing to say in a quote sort of review, but it's a real something for everybody kind of book. Like if you read nothing else, this is the one to read because even if you're not a big Superman person, there's probably something in it you'll appreciate.
Well, and this is the way DC should be. Like Superman should be one of the characters that has a flagship title that everyone would enjoy reading, and it hasn't been that way for so many years. It's
No,
great.
I'm gonna go this far, and tell me if I'm hitting too far below the belt, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
This reads like more or less what I thought Bendis was gonna do with it.
I can see why you would think that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And then he came in and he just effed the whole thing up.
And then Lex Luthor had to like contrive a way to say "F you, Bendis." Superman gets
Yeah,
like,
right out the gate.
Yeah.
Austin, Bendis came in and he didn't just ruin, he ruined everything. Not just Superman, but everything.
Oh man.
That was Plinkett quote. Anyway, let's try to knock out the rest of these super chats. Tom, $5 super chat, thanks. He says, "Is Dan okay? It looks like he's lost weight." Dan, have you lost any weight?
I have gained
Dan
weight that I am
hints from
trying
his
to
prison
lose.
Girlfriend.
Yeah.
Also
I
great.
have.
Great
sorry,
review,
go.
guys. I love you guys. Thanks, Tom.
I have gained weight that I'm trying to lose. So, I mean, I'm glad and flattered that you think that I look like I've lost weight, even though I'm fatter than I was before.
Even though you look sickly, apparently.
Yeah.
Is Dan okay? He needs to put on some weight.
Maybe it's the lighting. This is our new apartment in Brooklyn, so maybe I look weird at this camera.
Oh yeah, congrats on the move, man. I hope that
Thank
goes
you.
well for you.
I'm really loving it so far. New York is a dirty, gritty city, but I kind of like it.
Well, there's lots of greasy pizza for you to gain weight on.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always wanted to go live there for like a month and then never again.
It's like living in the Marvel universe. It's kind of cool. It's we have a balcony here, and I'm just like, I feel like I want to jump off it and go fight goons.
I mean, you always want to be like on the balcony of your building and think, I want to jump off.
Yeah,
But Dan,
but this time it's happy.
But if you do that, you'll get bored of that lifestyle, and after a while, you'll say, "I'm not going to go fight in crime anymore. I'm just going to reinforce buildings."
Yeah, exactly. I kind of understand what he's trying to do with that. Where it's just like, oh, like superheroes should like try to improve infrastructure because the United States is like literally falling apart at the seams in that regard. But like, come on.
And we rely on superheroes too much.
Yeah,
like I
true.
get that, the culture of dependence thing that I'm always talking about. But
Yeah.
he's so wishy-washy about it. He goes on TV, he's like, "I'm not going to put on this costume anymore." And then he goes to his wife. She's like, "You're not going to put on the costume?" "Yeah, I mean, I am."
And
Yeah,
by the way,
I don't
I
understand
cracked
that.
up. I cracked up when you guys were talking about the press conference being 3 pages because as someone that I've been writing comics now for a little while, like my own stuff, and one of the cardinal rules is to not have something like a press conference go on for 3 pages. You know, like the dialogue should not. You could say a lot with less, I guess, is what I'm saying. You know.
Well, I'll go as far as to say that unless it's a big, like, earth-shattering change in status quo or something for like an ongoing book, it's a rookie mistake to open with a press conference.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't buy Steelworks to watch CNN. I bought it to see Steel.
I look at the first page of a comic book and it's just a press conference and I'm like, I don't know, I can go do my dishes. Like,
At least give us a cold open where he's fighting someone and then do the press conference.
Yeah, when I buy Steel, I want to see someone done get hit by a hammer and not talk.
hell, have him give the press conference while fighting someone. MP $1.99 super chat, thoughts on Tom Taylor's Nightwing run overall?
I'm only 5 issues or so. That's all I've read of Tom Taylor's Nightwing, which is the recent arc. What I've read of it is fantastic. I've heard that, I mean, it's won an Eisner every year it's been on the stands, I think.
Oh, wow.
So it's supposedly like one of the best runs on the character ever. And I'd like to go back and read it because Dick Grayson is one of my favorite DC characters. So I'm intrigued and I'm liking what I'm reading so far, but I don't have an opinion on the whole run, unfortunately.
I read 1 issue and it was really great, and there was a lot of good drama and whatnot. And there was maybe one of the most comic booky statements I've ever heard, where they do like a little, "Oh, remember this thing that happened recently?" And it's like, they're like, "Nightwing, your dog Bitewing, he got possessed, or no, he was like given the ability to talk by Night Knight." And I was like,
Night Might, dude. That's
comic
awesome.
books are insane. Night Might showed up and made Bitewing talk.
Yeah, his name is Bitewing.
Yeah, he's got a 3-legged dog named Bitewing. Comic books are insane.
Yeah.
Dan, were you a Grant Morrison Batman and Robin fan?
I was. I've read all of Grant Morrison's Batman run, and that's kind of my favorite era of it because I think that's the only story where I liked Damian because he was a contrast to Dick. Like, the Robin being this, like, evil little man, I think worked with, like, the lighthearted, wisecracking Batman in a way that it doesn't now. Because, like, the point of Robin is to be a contrast to Batman, and I thought that was kind of a clever reversal. So yeah, I like that period a lot. I like what he did with Jason Todd during that run as well, making him a kind of a full-fledged villain. We've since went back on that because him being an anti-hero is really popular. But yeah,
I was really surprised not to see yet another Red Hood and the Outlaws book.
yeah.
He's still
by the same guy.
He's still around doing stuff.
Is he?
Like, he showed up in some book I was reading, so like he's still
He
around.
showed up in the Zdarsky Batman issue I read, and there's like a little image of him in the Green Arrow book, because Green Arrow does like this thing where like they'll talk about something and they'll have like a flash of the image next to them while they're talking about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was there.
Tim Drake, 49 super chat. Thanks, man. He says, the freewheeling Dan Torrey. Glad to see you back on the channel.
Thank you. I like the Bob Dylan reference. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
MP puts in a $10 super chat. Really appreciate you, man. I really enjoy Wade's World's Finest books. I did not look at that because I didn't realize that was part of this. I was just looking at a list of Dawn of DC on Wikipedia, and I didn't see that, so I didn't read it.
I think, Cap, you would adore the World's Finest book. It is the way I would describe it is modernized Silver Age DC, where it's kind of like Batman and Superman doing a romp through all goofy, obscure corners of the DC universe with like great character dynamics. Dick Grayson is there for pretty much every story. Kara Zor-El comes in and out as Superman's sidekick sometimes, and then he'll feature like the Doom Patrol or like other. The Metal Men is in the recent arc, and they're fighting Amazo. So like it's all kind of like bringing back the Silver Age elements of the DC universe and having Batman and Superman explore them. It's great. I would highly recommend the World's Finest book.
I will definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, the Teen Titans one, the first issue came in, I didn't like it as much. We'll get into this more, I suppose, when we talk about Shazam, because I know Austin read at least the first issue, but
so did we.
Oh, you guys did too. Great. So we'll all get to talk about it.
Shazam.
Yeah, I read that too.
Nice. So one of the things Austin said about Shazam that he didn't really care for was it felt like a 50 or 60-year-old man trying to write teenagers, and it didn't come off well. I could understand that to some degree in Shazam. For a few lines in the Teen Titans World's Finest book, it's like a whole cast of teenagers. So it's like there's no adults, and it's Mark Waid as a 56-year-old man writing teenagers in it. I thought the dialogue was kind of shaky sometimes. I was like, I don't think kids actually talk like that,
Austin, I would recommend you avoid that arc. Avoid that arc.
Funny. So I know you said the World's Finest Teen Titans one, but I bought Brave and the Bold thinking it was World's Finest, and I was like really putting it off. I was like, oh man, I don't like Wade. I don't want to read this. And then I started, and I'm like, I don't see his name on here, but I see Dan Mora, and I know that he's doing a lot of stuff with him. So I'm like, surely I'm missing it. And I went through the credits like 6 times, and then realized that it was not the book I thought it was.
Yeah, totally different tones too. One of the things that I think you'll appreciate, Cap, about the World's Finest book is it has objectively the best Batman costume in it.
Oh.
It is the classic blue caped cowl underpants Batman with the yellow circle and the yellow. I think it has the yellow circle utility belt too. It's just, and Dan Mora draws it. It's the best.
Dan Mora is just awesome.
So Jayson and I are huge Dan Mora fans. and we were excited that he was working on some of this stuff. I'll just again lay my cards on the table and say I didn't care for Shazam overall, but it was fun to see. It was fun to see Mora do that.
Here's the thing: I just don't like Shazam.
Aww.
Maybe if you read some classic Captain Marvel, you'd like that.
Yeah, I just don't like, and I've only seen modern stuff. I've seen the movies. I've seen some recent comics. Like, I just don't.
If you ever have any interest, Jayson, I would, because Shazam has become one of my favorite DC characters. I've got into him relatively recently, but they're putting out in trade paperbacks. I think the second one just came out. It's Jerry Ordway's run on Shazam, which is the post-crisis continuity, like around the time John Byrne rebooted Superman, and it's basically Man of Steel's John Byrne rebooting, but for Shazam on the same level of quality. It's fantastic. I would highly recommend that series as a kind of like way in if you ever have any interest. I know like you're probably not like waiting to read a character that you don't really care about, but if you ever do, that's what I would recommend.
But I was just going to say real quick that Mora did a Batman thing at the end of the first issue of Brave and the Bold that I didn't get around to reading. I only read the Batman part at the beginning. So I don't know how that is, Dan. But I was going to ask you about that, like the future stuff that he was drawing at the end of that. Like, is that any good?
Well,
I did not read it.
Story.
Oh, you didn't read it? Okay.
Oh, you did. What'd you think of it?
It was different. It's
wasn't it a standalone like one and done thing?
No, because it's like moving forward. Like next time you'll get to see this. No, it's like a manga universe where it's like in black and white.
Yeah.
And Batman's got like this sidekick bat that flies around that can like combine into him, and he becomes Super Batman.
Did you only
What?
Yeah, and he fights a giant robot, and he punches it in the head, and then its head opens up, and there's like a fiery blue Joker head.
It's really weird.
And and he's like saving two kids from them, and he's like, "Oh, like I saved you. I killed the Joker. Like, what are you two kids doing?" And they're like, "Hello, like I'm Dick, and this is my brother Jayson. We can't find our younger brother." And he's like, "Come on." And that's the story.
Yeah.
But it's very like
the
manga.
Superman story though. In that.
Yeah, I did too. I thought the Superman story was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Superman one I did read, and I did like that one quite a bit. The art in that one is really cool.
I'm a slacker. I didn't look at any of that.
You didn't? Oh, okay. So that's why you weren't sure what I was talking about earlier, because I was because I was like, yeah, they were talking about how like Batman knew.
I didn't know there was any Superman in that. I thought it was just that damn War thing at the end in Stormwatch. I didn't realize there was also a Superman.
Yeah, there's
thing.
also.
Yeah, and I skipped Stormwatch.
But I don't care about Stormwatch, so I skipped that.
I didn't skip Stormwatch because I don't know what Stormwatch is.
Do you know what it is now?
No.
That's what I figured.
No. I read like 2 pages of that, and I was like, I do not care. I skipped forward to Superman, which was fun because it was like a little Indiana Jonesy kind of adventure where he gets this thing and he's going off to some mountain at the end. But they gave Superman like his own gray ghost thing where it's like there's this show that I was obsessed with as a kid, and I thought that was really fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like an old Buck Rogers type thing, and he's like, I loved this.
Before we get to Shazam, let me finish reading MP Super Chat, and then I'll read John Tige real quick, and then we'll go to Shazam. He says, nice to see a modern take on the classic DCU. I could see DC doing a whole line of World's Finest books. I mean, if it's anthology.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Teen Titans one makes a lot of sense because they're heavily featured in a few of the World's Finest arcs. Maybe they could do a Doom Patrol one because Wade has them heavily involved in one of the arcs too. But I guess it just depends on what he wants to work on because he seems to be the architect of all that stuff, at least with the first 2 series.
Dan, was it... Sorry, you just reminded me of this. Was it Green Arrow where the Legion shows up, or was that a different book?
Legion of Superheroes.
Because they show up...
Oh.
They showed up somewhere...
My mind glazes over whenever the Legion of Superheroes.
That's what I was about to say, and that's the way I always put it. I always say that's the whole reason I brought it up. Is like I was really enjoying this book, and then suddenly Legion of Superheroes, and I'm like, crap. I don't care anymore.
See, and the Legion of Superheroes, like, supposedly they're like Paul Levitz's run is like legendary. Like, people love the Legion of Superheroes that are like into it. Jim Shooter worked on the Legion of Superheroes before he came to Marvel, and supposedly his run is good. But like, as someone that doesn't know anything about those characters, I'm just like, yeah, it's Greek to me, man. I don't know.
Yeah, you watch Mark Millar's interview show, and every single guest is like, if I could work on anything, it's Legion of Superheroes. Even Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
What?
Dude, years ago I did I'm kind of stalling waiting for Jayson to get back, but years ago I did a trivia show at a convention, and my comic shop owner was putting this whole thing on, and he asked me to do several different shows with different topics, and he said, whatever you do, make sure. I was going to do like 10 shows, all with different topics. Like a Star Trek one, and a Ninja Turtles one, and like MCU, a bunch of different things, and then some comic things too. And he goes, whatever you do, make sure that you do a show for Legion of Superheroes. And I was like, no one's showing up for that. He goes, there are these like ravenous Legion fans that know trivia for it in and out, and I was like, and how many of them are going to be at this convention standing in front of the stage? I don't believe you.
How many of
You
them
would
are
do
still
it, and then
alive?
Rob Liefeld would show up.
That would be pretty awesome.
I convinced him not to make me do that because I don't know anything about Legion. I didn't want to have to write that.
No, that's totally fair. I mean, it's hard to write trivia questions about things that you like haven't read because you just like go on the wiki page. You're like, so what is the name of Kid Brainiac from the Legion of Superheroes?
Yeah, and I already had to flub it a little bit because I don't know Doctor Who super well, but
yeah,
there were like Doctor Who actors at that con, so like I had to do Doctor Who, but like
right.
I drew the line at Legion of Superheroes.
That's awesome.
Well, next time you do that, you can do a Man-Thing one. That's what I demand.
You demand thing.
Yeah.
John Ty, $5 super chat. Dan, what
Yes.
are your thoughts on Metallo's characterization in action? The way Philip Kennedy Johnson writes Metallo is great, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I guess I can't really talk about this without spoiling it. So, spoiler alert for the current arc of Action Comics, I guess. So, Metallo has this thing. I don't know if this is like a new thing with him because I haven't read much of the character, but like he has this whole kind of relationship with his sister, and Cyborg Superman uses that relationship with his sister to manipulate Metallo into being in his like scheme. Cyborg Superman is revealed to be the ultimate villain of that first arc by Kennedy Johnson in the second to last issue.
Oh, so he's been around. That's why he
Yeah.
shows up in Dark Crisis. Okay.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it so far. I thought Philip Kennedy Johnson's a pretty good writer. So I thought he did a good job.
Is that all stuff that happens pre-Dawn of DC? Is that like a
No,
previous arc?
this is the first Dawn of DC arc, who is Metallo and Cyborg Superman.
I see.
Like yeah.
Ooh, I'm excited to read that. I should have kept
Yeah,
going.
it's cool. It's cool.
But I had to read other stuff like the first issue of Night Terrors.
I didn't even read that. I had
was
to
like,
read
there's no way I'm reading the first issue of
Steel Workers, or whatever that's called.
Didn't you read something that the rest of us didn't?
I read Cyborg.
You read Cyborg, and you read Tale of Teen Titans.
And I read Tale of Titans, which
Or
was
not Teen Titans, yeah.
okay. That first issue was, I mean, it was fine. It was all
a
about,
ringing endorsement.
it was all about Starfire and how everyone kept calling her a princess when she's not actually a princess, but like.
Interesting.
What a story, Mark.
Yeah, that's the plot, and she just gets.
Unfortunate.
There's all these, like, mild status quo changes with things, you know? It's like, I'm going to be a superhero, but not really, like, with Steel, and, you know, stuff like, there's still a Green Lantern Corps, but they're run by some weird planet organization, and they don't let Green Lanterns be at Earth anymore, but otherwise it's entirely the same as it was before.
My favorite thing in the normal Titans book was in the first issue when Amanda Waller and Peacemaker are trying to get the Titans to work for the government, and they're like, oh, you get to work for your country, and Wonder Girl goes, this isn't in my country, and then Starfire goes, it's not even my planet, and then
And then
Raven
Raven
goes,
was like,
I was born in a
another
different
dimension."
universe.
Yeah, no, the main Titans book is great.
Yeah, it
So
is.
far in the first issue, and that whole scene is wonderful. That's why I can't get mad that Peacemaker keeps showing up because it's
Exactly.
great.
Well, it sounds like he's being written pretty consistently.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you just have somebody spout crazy things.
John put in another $2 super chat and says thoughts on Detective Comics by Ram V. We brought that up real briefly, but I've read a couple issues of that, and I'm not over the moon about it yet, but I like the atmosphere and the art a lot, and I like that it's like future Batman stuff. You got like a Harvey Dent who is reformed and has like a gold piece on one side of his face. That whole thing was kind of fun. But anyway, go ahead, Dan.
I don't know that that's future. I think that's like continuing from some of the previous detective stuff from before, if I remember correctly.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I've only read Detective like from like when he started writing it. I don't know what happened before that because I know it was like a team book for a while. And I was like, I have no interest in Detective Comics being a team book. That sounds completely counterintuitive.
And with
Which is not the first time that's been done either with freaking Clayface.
Yeah. So I've really liked that book because it's been so Two-Face centric. He's one of my favorite Batman villains, and it like the psychodrama with Two-Face continues through his whole run.
Oh,
and
cool.
I've really liked that stuff. I'm not current on it because I've been reading it on DC Universe Infinite, and I haven't had enough money to buy like the more recent issues on Comixology yet. So I'm waiting to catch up on it. But it is a good book. I would recommend it, at least for the stuff I've read. I can't speak for the current arc, but it's the same creative team, so I assume it's cool.
I just appreciate that it's just detective stories again. Like that's kind of nice. Like it's called Detective, and he's trying to figure out some things. I don't know. That's
How
nice.
can you not take that for granted? It's so strange.
Yeah, well, because Detective has been the more catch-all, action-driven book for a really long time, and
Yeah.
it's the less cerebral. But I don't like it. Bugs me. So I don't have that anymore. But the other thing is, and again, I only read 2 issues, so tell me if this changes, Dan, or if like there's anything you can think of where you wouldn't describe it this way.
Yeah.
It reads really timeless to me. I couldn't tell you when that book was made.
There's some stuff with Talia that's pretty current as it goes along, you'll see. Because I know at this point I think Ra's al Ghul is dead, and she's kind of like the head of the League of Shadows and all that stuff. I don't know how long or League of Assassins in the comics. I don't know how long that's been the status quo. But she shows up later on. So like there are ties to the recent continuity, but to your point, I don't think you need to be like super into it to like get the story and enjoy it.
Well, honestly, I couldn't even tell if it was in continuity or not. I thought it was set in the future. So what I mean is that it doesn't read real modern. Like it's not riddled with references to recent anything. Like it reads very late 80s to me.
It's awesome because it's not like Diet Grant Morrison, like how the Batman book has been for many years to varying degrees. Like as soon as I opened the Zdarsky run and it's Zur-En-Arrh Batman again, I was like, time to close. Detective, I had the exact opposite, where it was like, oh, like this is what I expect Batman comics to be. In a good way, not like in a I expect this and it's like predictable. Like what I expect it to be in a way like if I want to read Batman, this is what it should be.
If it's aping anybody, it's like Alan Grant and those guys.
That's awesome.
I think.
Yeah, I haven't read a ton of his stuff, so I wouldn't know. But I mean, that's really good to hear.
But like Austin, I feel like it goes back to that. What is that book that like Shaman was in?
Oh, Tales from the Dark Knight.
Yeah, it's like O'Neill and Grant and those guys.
So I didn't have that, but I only read 1 issue, so I only read like part of a story, and I was just like, oh, this is just Batman versus Hellraiser, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll probably completely change my mind after I read more of that and be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was dumb. But
No, it's just funny because you guys were talking about like the detective stuff, and I'm like, that 1 issue I had didn't have a ton of that. so you guys would like know way more about it than I do, because the one I had was just like him fighting for a while.
Yeah, no, I think your point is valid, Cap. Like, I mean, I haven't read a ton of '80s Batman, but the very little I've read, I would agree with your, comparing it to that in a positive way.
And especially compared to anything I've read in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely better than the Zdarsky issue I read.
We need to wrap up. I know Dan's got to get going, so let's make sure to hit the other books we haven't talked about much. And Dan, tell us a little bit about Shazam and why you like this book, because I feel like you might be on an island with this. I'm not sure.
I really like the some of the stuff Mark Waid does with going back to what Shazam is in what I like about it. Shazam is like magic mythological Superman, and I love that we're kind of, the Jeff Johns stuff tried to be kind of grounded. I mean, it has that sort of the Jeff Johns stuff. He tries to like do that kind of Green Lantern-esque reinvention with him, where he like grounds it, makes it more serious. It's about like a group of orphans and their interpersonal relationships, and that is still carried along here. But I liked bringing back some of the goofier Silver Age elements and really focusing it on like the wider like mythology of the Rock of Eternity and the various spirits that Shazam gets his powers from, and them getting corrupted. That's something that's like right out of Jerry Ordway's run. I also really liked how Mark Waid is going out of his way to kind of distinguish Captain Marvel's powers, or I guess Shazam. I don't even know what to call him at this point. They call him the Captain.
The Captain. I hate that. Here.
I thought it worked as like the kids making fun of him sort of thing. I don't think that name is going to stick like long term and be like his name for the rest of this book or whatever. At least that's the feeling I got. But I think I really liked talking about like what exactly the powers that he gets from the Shazam wizard does to his everyday life. Like, he doesn't have super intelligence like Superman. It's sort of like when you sit down to play D&D and people are like, what's the difference between wisdom and intelligence? And you have to explain to them, like, and like here, like I thought that like that was cleverly the wisdom of Solomon aspect of his powers is very cleverly integrated into like the life of a kid and all that kind of stuff. I do agree that there are points where the dialogue can be a little, you can tell it's not a kid writing it, but it didn't bother me in these two issues, at least as much as it did in the World's Finest Teen Titans book that I was talking about earlier. I know Austin said that was one of his big barriers to entry with this, where it was like, everyone's like, lit fam, like that kind of stuff. And I personally...
Everything is fire!
Yeah, like, I didn't personally have exactly that experience with it, but I do understand what you mean, because Waid can get that way, and I've seen it done recently. To a degree where it bothered me, so I can get where you're coming from in that regard. But for me, it was just kind of like this really feels like going back to the roots of the character, and like someone who... In the same way that he did with like the Flash, and when he took Daredevil back to its kind of Silver Agey roots in a cool way that reconciled the past continuity and did something that modernizes it in a fresh way. That's what I really liked about this as a fan of this character. But mileage may vary if you're not a fan of the character, or if Wade's not your cup of tea. I can totally see the different perspective.
Austin, I know you don't like, and this book is heavily patterned after the movies, which was curious to me, and a thing I didn't really care for. But Austin, I know
it's not so much pattern after the movies as it is kind of taking the Jeff Johns stuff that the movies are based on and continuing with it. That's the way I would describe it.
Okay, and see, I didn't read that stuff, so that's not fair on me. I wasn't sure with the movies, like, how much of the supporting characters were already reinvented. I guess I assumed the movies did that.
No, the movies are almost a straight up adaptation of Jeff Johns' run. Like, everything in those movies is taken from his New 52 and backup stories in Justice League, and then the ongoing he did for a little while after that. So I kind of saw this as Waid reconciling like the old Golden Age Captain Marvel stuff with the New 52 stuff, and like smashing them into something that was modernized and interesting to me anyway.
Okay, yeah, I'm not initiated enough to appreciate that. Austin, I know you didn't like it with the movies that Shazam feels too much like Billy Batson himself, where he doesn't have like enough of a change when he transforms. Is that your issue with this?
Well, my issue in the movies is that they're like completely different characters.
Yeah,
Like,
that is true, especially in the second one.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the second one, but that's my biggest issue with the first one. Is it's like Billy Batson's this character with pathos, and then Shazam is Kid Deadpool.
Yeah, it's even worse.
I didn't have that here as much because we cut the pathos Billy Batson out, and it's like Shazam and Billy Batson are Kid Deadpool, which isn't entirely fair. But that was my experience reading it. It was just like that part that I didn't like about Shazam, and only that. And then like the kid dialogue I thought was super cringy. My favorite line with that is when Freddy, the brother, goes, they're in the Rock of Eternity, and he's like, this place is hella magic vibes, bro. Something like that. And it's like, oh. But even like the Wisdom of Solomon thing, like the way it reads, he's like, oh man, like the wisdom of Solomon, it's always telling me to like eat my vegetables and stuff. And one of the big things I had too with Billy Batson is I can't tell how old he's supposed to be in that issue. Like I don't know if he's like 8 or if he's supposed to be like 13. And I think there's like different details he puts in that make me think anywhere between that. So like that was another issue I had with it. Basically, Mark Waid is a hack.
Yeah, Austin has never liked Mark Waid.
Yeah, and to be fair, I did come into it going, okay, I have to be fair to this. I'm gonna like let things slide. So like the first bit of dialogue, I was like, just let it slide, enjoy this book, and then it just kept like coming and coming, and I just couldn't.
And me as a kid, no one talks like that.
No one talks like that.
And I feel like no one used to talk like that either.
But yeah, Austin's got Mark Waid hang-ups that I've never fully understood. Like, not to just call you out with it, but like there are I think he's hit or miss before anything. I think I like a lot of his early stuff. I don't even find him hit or miss early on. I think in his later work, just like Bendis, he absolutely is. But like some of my favorite things are Mark Waid things, and Austin doesn't like any of them.
He's just one of those writers like Lindelof, where like I read or with Lindelof it's watching, but like I just see their stuff and I'm like, there's just like a disconnect where I'm like I don't get it. I don't know.
Like, I told Austin before he read it, he probably wouldn't like Kingdom Come. And then he was like, why? And I was like, I just know you're not going to like it. And then he read it, and he didn't like it.
And I was also like, no, like, I'm going to love this book. Because I hadn't really clued in that I didn't like Waid at that point. That was the book where I finally went, yeah, I think I just don't like Waid.
Austin, would you talk a little bit about Doom Patrol?
Doom Patrol is very wacky, and it's a lot of fun. It opens with two talking gorillas, one that you can like see its brain shooting people, and that is just objectively how you start a comic issue, especially in number 1. No, it's a lot of fun. Batman shows up and he's like, we're gonna take this metahuman to Arkham, and the Doom Patrol are like, no, Arkham sucks. We're gonna take them, and that's the story.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun time. I feel like I need to read more Doom Patrol. I'm sure there's stuff that went over my head, but it was a good time.
You guys want to know the cliffhanger of the first issue of Cyborg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, spoilers!
Someone knocks...
Does Peacemaker show up?
No.
Does Amanda Waller show up?
A robot knocks at Cyborg's door, and it turns out that it's his dad.
Oh.
Yeah. That's why I was like, no.
His dad's a cyborg?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not awful.
It's not awful, but it's like, I wanted something kind of...
See, I agree with you, Jayson. I feel like making his dad a cyborg is like the most obvious half thing to do.
I
You
know. It's
I'm
Cyborg.
trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it goes to Cool Plants issue 1.
Dan, don't laugh. We're like 3 issues away from Zeb Wells doing that with Uncle Ben. Hello, Peter. I am Spider too. And I'm alive again.
If they're already giving Mary Jane powers and making her a superhero soon, and I'm like, done, dude. I'm out of here.
If DC hasn't learned anything, they're at least making pivots, trying things opposite from things that haven't been working, that make it look like maybe they figured some things out. Marvel is doing none of that.
So the only things they are doing is they are so that like they have like Jed MacKay is a pretty good writer. He's doing the new Doctor Strange book, which I've read the first issue of, which is really good. And then they're just hiring people from DC, like Philip Kennedy Johnson, the action guy, is doing Hulk, and it's great because it's a guy that's good,
And Dan Abnett's doing Guardians, so I want to read that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're starting to come back with some cool stuff. And JMS is doing Cap soon, the Captain America book, which I'm so excited about that.
I'll try that out.
Yeah. So there's a few cool things. I feel like they're starting to turn it around a little bit.
Okay, but it sounds like they're having to... I hope that's true, and I'm not just throwing shade. I haven't read hardly anything Marvel in a long time. But what it sounds like is they have to either go to DC writers that are doing good things already, or go to 70-year-old men.
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. And Jed MacKay, who he cut his teeth kind of doing the Black Cat ongoing, which I loved. His Black Cat book is fantastic. And he's like kind of their up and coming, architect of the Marvel Universe type guy. They've given him the Avengers and Doctor Strange. He's on those 2 books now.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't read the Avengers. I've heard good things, but I'm not usually a huge Avengers guy. So I'm like, I'm already reading like 80 DC books, so I don't have enough money for the Avengers now.
Uh,
Why don't we go ahead and wrap things up? Are there any books that we meant to talk about that we haven't brought up?
I read Catwoman, which was pretty fun, and that's...
Oh, I thought Catwoman was who could possibly care.
I was like, oh, this is fine.
I was, in the parlance of Q from TNG, bored to tears.
I mean, that's fair.
Couldn't possibly care. I liked the art in that book, okay? It was kind of cartoony. And
I didn't really have any issues
stylish
with art in any of the books I read.
No, all the art's fine.
Yeah.
She's in prison, and she's navigating being in prison, and there's another girl being Catwoman on the outside. I don't care.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did anyone read Harley Quinn?
No.
I did not.
I would rather shoot myself. No.
You know why I didn't read Harley Quinn? Because it looks like this.
Does Peacemaker show up in Harley Quinn?
Hey, can we all agree DC deserves some applause for at least making Amanda Waller fat again?
Yeah.
Well, I've been saying hashtag make Amanda Waller fat again for a long time.
Yeah, like
So,
she's not
I'll do
just,
that.
middle of the road like she used to be. Like, she's old school 80s Doom Patrol Amanda Waller. Like, she's gained weight again.
And I feel like in the one issue that I
Like
saw
Dan,
her in,
except I noticed with her.
I also feel like she's even shorter, so she's like Gimli now, and I really like that.
Dan
Oh,
claims he
God.
gained weight. I didn't notice. But I'm just saying Amanda Waller, like, you notice she gained weight. And she's supposed to be heavy set. So anyway.
And short, so I'm
Dan,
happy.
you okay?
Amanda Waller. That's the question that Tom should have asked in the super chat. Is Amanda Waller okay? What's going on with
You
her?
look like you've gained a little weight.
DC was like, okay, Amanda Waller, we're stop rebooting. Here's a million brownies.
Oh dear God! So my screen that you were projecting was Frozen Cap, and I'm just now seeing this image of Harley Quinn. Dear God!
Yeah, that's why I didn't read it. Look at that.
So how was it, Jason?
No, I didn't read it.
Oh,
Oh, you
and
did.
I thought about it. I actually did want to.
let me
but-
say too that in pulling pictures down, I actually was really glad that you didn't, because I probably wouldn't have let you read that book.
Oh no!
As I was looking at it, I don't know
I mean,
how
look at that cover.
it it looks a little overly sexual in some places. I'll throw that. I mean, it says 13 plus, but there's a page where they've got I don't know the context because I didn't read the book, but like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy are making out, and it's a little.
So there are a couple like they are in the TV show
explicit.
In the comics now, I assume, right?
I guess.
I saw an ad for that. I don't watch the Harley Quinn show, but I saw an ad for the recent season, and she was making out with Poison Ivy, so I assume that's kind of what they.
I haven't watched since like middle of season 2, but that's where I figured that was going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we had like one episode of the animated series where they're both in their underwear together because everyone who worked on the animated series is a pervert. so now there's just a couple.
And I'm not saying because it was a girl kissing a girl. I'm just saying because it was kind of explicit. Like,
I just think making out's gross in general, so I get it.
Speaking of ratings, because I meant to mention this earlier, I want to just leave this on the screen so that Dan can keep like throwing up. But there's a weird discrepancy with the Shazam book that I wanted to point out that was odd. So the first issue. And I'm pretty sure this is just a mistake, but it's funny to me. The first issue, the rating is 13 plus teen, like a lot of these are. I don't think they all are, but a lot of them are. Maybe they all are, but I'm not sure. And then the second issue says 17 plus mature. There's not anything in that book that would make... And then why would you change it between issues?
That's hella sus, bro.
Mature readers are fire.
See, Dan, you're as qualified to write that age of characters as Mark Waid.
Yeah, apparently. You should see the Teen Titans one. It's just like an entire book of people talking like that, like in a group setting.
I don't wanna...
Yeah.
I just want those Mark Waid teen characters to meet Doc Brown, where he's like, why is everything on fire in the future?
I learned that term on a Captain Logan show. I had not heard it yet, and apparently I was like 5 years behind. And somebody said something that I did was fire, and I was like, is that negative? Did I make a mistake? Like, I was so confused. Okay, guys, we are well into 2 hours, and as always, I figured this would be shorter, but we've been here a while. But we covered lots of ground. We talked about a lot of different things, and thanks everybody for participating in the comments. Dan or Austin, anything else we should have talked about that we didn't, or any further I don't know, mentions you want to bring up about anything?
I would just say like the books that I would recommend the most out of any of them would be probably Superman, World's Finest, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, and Titans. Those are probably my favorite ones of the new crop of stuff that I've been reading from DC.
I would say...
Yeah, throw out your 3 or 4 that you'd say if you read
4.
nothing else, check out these. Keeping in mind there should probably be things that are easy enough to jump into, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Superman, Titans are the big 2. I've only read the first issue of this, but probably Green Arrow. Because I've heard that the rest of that's pretty good too.
Yep.
And what else did I even read? Not the
Steelworks.
We recommend Steelworks on an ironic level, folks.
Now I wish I read Steelworks.
No, you don't.
You weren't missing out. Like, and probably Brave and the Bold. Honestly, I actually quite enjoyed that.
And like all 4 of the stories.
Yeah. Not the
Stormwatch.
Not the Stormwatch one, but yeah. And the anime one's weird too, but I really enjoyed that first story.
Austin, what are the 3 or 4 for you?
So I guess my 4, because I made a little ranking, so I'm looking at that. So I guess it would be Green Lantern, Titans, Superman, Doom Patrol, and Green Arrow, or like the 4. Or I said more than 4,
I said 5.
but those are the ones that I think are really great. Out of the stuff I read, the only things I didn't really like were Shazam #1, and it was Batman 136 that I read. Outside of that, I thought everything was pretty good.
Yeah, because you didn't read Cyborg or Steelworks or Harley Quinn.
Exactly. I was
Hey.
looking at the list and I was like, don't care, don't care.
Hey,
don't care.
none of us read Harley Quinn. You can't speak to Harley Quinn.
That's true, but it doesn't look
Look at that
good.
cover. She's like, I'm not reading that.
My big ones, which I've already basically said, Superman. I want to give Superman all 3 spots, but it's Superman and Green Arrow, and then after that, I don't know. I guess it only sort of counts, but like Detective, I would maybe throw in there, or maybe Action. What little I've read of it.
If World's Finest counts for me, then I'd count Detective. You know, it's just an ongoing book currently. I mean, even though it's not part of the initiative, I'd say you could count it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's something of a mixed bag for me, but it feels like we're moving in the right direction. Maybe
Yeah, definitely.
it's kind of where I'm at. I'm gonna put this on my wall.
But it's your backdrop on your computer.
This is gonna be the
Your
new.
wall.
Yeah, this is gonna be the new background that you see when we do live streams. Like you have to look at this for a minute before we go live and start talking.
You should do that whenever you show.
Dan, thank you for getting us to read all these.
Oh yeah, I mean, thanks for taking a look at them. I mean, I wanted to kind of spread the news that the comic industry was kind of, not a complete mess creatively as it has been in recent years. At least in my view, I don't mean to like hate on the people involved or like if you've enjoyed stuff. Just for me personally and my taste, like, and I know you guys have similar taste to me. Like, I there's been a lot of stuff that just hasn't interested me, and I was just pleasantly surprised to look through all these and be like, wow, these are actually fun. This is great. So
Absolutely.
For the 6 people that will care, Power Rangers is really good right now. That's one of the only other things that I'm reading, but it has come back full circle and it's wonderful now. Lord Zed got a morpher. That's all you need to know.
Transformers in October.
They did a Power Rangers Godzilla crossover. I haven't read that yet, but I've heard good things. And there's a Justice League Godzilla Kong thing coming. For anybody that cares about that.
Oh, Beast Boy turning into Godzilla was amazing.
Oh, it was so amazing.
It was awesome.
And fighting
Fighting,
Titano.
yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
yeah, Beast Boy fights Titano, the giant kryptonite ape. It's the best.
And he's like a lizard guy that looks like Godzilla.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It's-
No, Titans is maybe my favorite book here. It's either that or Green Lantern. So
Which is funny because Jason and I didn't care for that.
yeah.
Now I do have to say with Shazam, the one thing I did really enjoy was the dinosaur stuff, and I didn't mention that. I should bring that up. But
Yeah,
that was
fun.
that was fun.
That was the Silver Age element stuff that I kind of missed from Jeff Johns because it's very like Gary Frank grounded, like that kind of Batman Earth 1 tone with Shazam. I'm like, I love that there's like alien T-Rexes in Shazam things. It's cool.
It's not just because I love dinosaurs. When dinosaurs show up, I tend to kind of melt a little bit. But it's because like they were like from space and they were drinking tea and like these giant teacups. And they give Shazam his giant teacup.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then that comes back and he's in legal trouble. That's fun. You haven't gotten to that part yet, Austin. But the second issue is he winds up in legal trouble. Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to, but I like that part. Okay, well,
Bye, everybody.
once again, everybody, thanks a lot for being here. Austin, thanks for reading everything and popping in. Jason, thanks for doing. Yeah, you read a lot.
I read a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I would read I thought I would catch up on 3 books and read the first issue of 3 other books.
You probably read what, 8 or 10?
8 or 10, yeah.
Good job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Way to read.
One of them was Steelworks.
Dan, come back again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The last thing I'd like to say before
Yes, sir.
we sign off here is I'm actually writing a comic, and the Kickstarter starts on September 1st. So if anyone's interested in checking it out, it's called Star Spangled Tales. It's a historical fiction horror anthology series. The first arc is about the American who invented the oil drill and the deal that he makes with a demon in order to get the invention. And shenanigans ensue. So if you guys are interested in those kind of stories, I'll probably put a link in this video in a comment or something, so you guys can go check it out. And yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Good luck with that, and send me a link, and I'll make sure and get that everywhere.
definitely. Thank you.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very hip and very cool.
All right, guys, we'll see you later. Once again, I was Captain Logan. We had Dan Torrey here. We had
Thanks for having me.
We had Austin, the Spider-Man Ghost,
Bye.
and we had Jayson, the Steelworks Man.
Steelworks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.